In this video, we are going to explain in detail how moisture exchange occurs inside a cold storage room and why this process, if not properly controlled, can cause food to dry out and lose quality. Everything starts at the evaporator. When air passes over this very cold surface, its temperature drops rapidly. As it cools, the air contracts, meaning its volume decreases, and as a result, its relative humidity increases. This happens because cold air can hold much less water vapor than warm air. In other words, cold air fills up with moisture much faster. This cold air, with high relative humidity, circulates throughout the cold room and begins to surround the stored food. This is where the energy exchange takes place. The food, which is usually warmer than the cold air, starts transferring some of its heat to the air. As a result, the air warms up slightly and the food cools down. However, this warming of the air has an immediate effect. Its relative humidity decreases. Why? Because as temperature rises, the air expands, creating more space to hold water vapor, and therefore it becomes relatively drier. And this is where the key phenomenon begins. The difference in relative humidity between the air around the food and the surface of the food itself. The surface moisture of the food, also called peripheral moisture, becomes unbalanced with the air. Since the air has become relatively drier, a vapor pressure gradient is established. Water vapor, by nature, always tends to move from where there is more to where there is less. In this case, it moves from the surface of the food, where there is more moisture, to the surrounding air, where there is less. Simply put, the air around the food acts like a dry sponge that pulls moisture from the product. The surface water begins to slowly escape, evaporating and mixing with the air inside the chamber. This process, technically known as moisture migration or mass transfer driven by a hygroscopic gradient, doesn't stop there. If these conditions persist during storage, the loss will not only be on the surface, the internal moisture of the food will gradually migrate outward, causing progressive dehydration. The consequences of this phenomenon are clear and in many cases negative. Loss of commercial weight of the product, which means less profitability. Changes in texture, vegetables wilt and shrivel, meats become tough, and bread and baked goods dry out. Reduced shelf life as foods lose freshness, juiciness, and an attractive appearance for consumers. This is why in refrigeration and food storage systems, it is not enough to control temperature alone. It is also essential to regulate air velocity and the relative humidity inside the chamber. Airflow that is too fast accelerates evaporation, and very low ambient humidity increases the vapor pressure gradient, intensifying water loss. In conclusion, a cold room doesn't only cool food, it also alters the moisture balance between the product and the air. If this process is not properly managed, it results in unwanted food drying, economic losses, and a considerable reduction in the perceived quality for the consumer.